On behalf of Paoli Friends Meeting and the Orange County Historical Society, we do want to welcome you to from Orange County, North Carolina to Orange County, Indiana, a Quaker Odyssey. Tonight there will be no singing, there will be no offering, and if you want any of that, come back tomorrow morning and we'll take an offering, but not tonight. We're going to get right to the program. And without any more ado, and then at the end when John is going to give his presentation, he is going to take questions, and then Robert Henderson is going to end on behalf of Orange County Historical Society. John Allen is a Quaker genealogist. By trade, John was a dairy farmer. And John, you said, why did you give up farming?
Got to where we couldn't meet the bills.
Right, when you can't meet the bills, you give up farming. And I could go on and on about John. When I was pastor Cane Creek from 2004, along with my wife Sue, 2004 to 2014, my dad died during that time, and John filled in as a surrogate father. I appreciated him for that. And so I could tell you so many stories about John. He prefers to be referred to as friend John, but tonight he's going to be cousin John. Now I want to tell you one story about him. My wife suggested I take him to French Lick and show him the hill over the golf place, and the golf holes. And I said, "Oh, John's not interested in that, because when John does genealogy, he is zoned in." So we're at spring meeting one time in Alamance County, just out of snow camp, and John had taken me deep into these woods, these briars, to show me a grave. And John's telling me about it, and all of a sudden he goes, "Run!" I said, "What?" "Run!" And all of a sudden I felt all these yellow jackets stinging my leg. John had led me right to a yellow jacket nest, and I want to tell you, this old man now is 91. At the time he was about 85. I never saw an 85-year-old man run as fast as he did. But without any further ado, I want to present to you the Quaker genealogist, friend and cousin John.
Mark didn't finish that. We ran, and how we did run.
Oh, yes.
But we haven't been invited to try out for the Olympics yet. We bring greetings from Cane Creek meeting and our sister meeting, Spring. It's always good to meet new friends and cousins. In 2001, we observed our 250th anniversary at Cane Creek. And we published a booklet. The title of it is From Whence We Came. And tonight, that's what we're going to take a look at, from whence the Paoli people came. Actually, we were disappointed that more families didn't participate, but that's what we're going to do tonight. Okay. Mark suggested this title, and old country boy didn't know what Odyssey meant. So I checked with Webster, and he said it's an extended journey, extended trip or journey. So that's what we will end with, that extended trip or journey to Paoli. Okay. as this slide says, we're going to focus on the Lindley family because that Jonathan Lindley was instrumental in leading this migration here. And the situations and conditions that he encountered was for everyone. And sadly enough, we don't know much about the others. Just the Quakers with their records. So they're part of this meeting and part of this area, but we just don't know about them. Now this is a publication, The Immigration of Irish Quakers into America. Irish. These people were not Irish. So, why did he label it Irish? He gives two reasons. A few years before the earlier, Cromwell overran Ireland. The British under Cromwell overran Ireland and paid his soldiers with land. And the other reason, and the Quaker, the Lindley genealogist cited this, that the one that he started with, Isaac Lindley, was in the English town of Chestershire, which is today Chester. And we had the privilege of walking on the Roman wall at Chester. The Romans pulled out about 300 AD. And he is in Ireland to avoid persecution from the crown. Okay. And this is the James Lindley that migrated to America. And can you read that last paragraph? That Thomas is the only one of the Lindley children that came to Carolina. He married Ruth Hadley, and she might have been in charge because her brother Joshua and her sister Hannah, and of course the Hannah's the King Creek people, the Dixons, were already here. So that may have been a reason that he was the only one that came. This is the meeting where he presented his certificate in Pennsylvania. If you can see, 1712, something? And it was one of the earlier meetings in Pennsylvania. And the inside, I labeled that Quaker lady, that's my wife. Okay. Oh, what? Back up. I want to make a note about it. Back up. Located on U.S. Highway 1 adjoining the Brandywine Battlefield. Now, we'll get off of this subject for a minute. The Brandywine Battle started. The British under Cornwallis came up from Baltimore and met the the Continental Army under Washington there at Brandywine. And the tradition has it that in the meeting house here, there was a business meeting going on when the battle started. The cannon, and actually there are bullet marks in the buildings today. And there was a business meeting, and the recording clerk made this entry. The meeting concluded early. Okay. Now, as London Grove was settled, James Lindley moved his membership to London Grove. Now, this picture is a recent picture, and it is a huge building that was built especially for court and a meeting. And today it's just a part of it that's used for the meeting house, and the other part is the school. And in the interior, notice the facing benches where the weighty friends sat. Now, by weighty, I think it means more mature, experienced friends, which today we might call our ministering council. Okay. Now, lands around London Grove. James Lindley had another tract of land that's not shown here. But he's got two tracts here, and then of course there's the London Grove meeting, which is near. And the road today is US 1, Baltimore that way, Wilmington, Delaware this way. And this is the road that goes from London Grove meeting down to New Garden meeting. And then of course there's the John Allen. That's my ancestor. We were up on a trip and we was at London Grove, and we knew that John Allen had property along that township line between London Grove and New Garden. And there near the London Grove meeting house, there's some ladies sitting out there, and we asked them if they would direct us down that township line. We knew it would be an area. And this woman said, we told her what we were looking for. And he said, I know where the John Allen house is. He said, you go around this curve and up ahead, and look up on the hill, and there's the John Allen house. I've always heard. He lived to be old, and he's quite contrary. I knew that was the one. And so this is the tract where they lived in when they came, when James Lindley died, and then, okay. And James Lindley died, and his wife remarried. And then that's about the time Thomas left. And we think it was because of the, he was married to Ruth Hadley. And Ruth Hadley's brother Joshua and her sister Hannah was already here. So we think that's why he was the only one that came to Carolina.
John's 91, so I think we can allow him to sit down.
McCullough Grants. This is the McCullough Grant 11 is the where King Creek is. The land where King Creek is, where the meeting house is in 11, and the land where the spring meeting house is, well, Simon Dixon's land adjoined the King Creek meeting house property, and Thomas Lindley is downstream about 5 or 6 miles, and it is a Granville grant. Now, I read an address by Eustace McCall before Parliament. And he said, of course he's a land agent. He said, now if we can get people in there, just think of all the shiploads of commodities that we can get, sell to other nations, and how much money we'll make. So anyway, it turned out that it was almost free land. We'll look at that later. Now, I was unable to find the actual Thomas Lindley land grant, but this is a John Allen land grant that's within the same time period and the same area. And as you can see up at the top, it's from the Earl of Granville. And down here at the bottom, 600 acres for 24 shillings. It equates to 4 shillings per 100 acres. So that was the incentive for the migration, cheap land. Now, over on the left, St. Matthew's. What does that mean?
There was what?
St. Matthew's Parish.
St. Matthew's Parish.
Okay. That was an area where the settlers were taxed to support the Anglican Church.
Oh, okay.
And the Quakers didn't like that. or the other settlers, because there was no money, and to be taxed and prohibited to have another. It was a decree that the Anglican Church was to be the only church. And the term meeting house not only applied to Quakers, but the Baptists. Of course, the Baptists is about the only one in there that early. They named their places of worship the meeting house up until about 1830. Then that's when they started calling them churches. But that's free land, almost free, 4 shillings per 100 acres. And that was they called it quittance. And that was to reimburse for the cost of surveying and writing the legal papers, to reimburse them for that, because the settlers did not have to advance any money. And from the time they applied for a grant until it was finalized, about 3 years. So this grant, 1756, was applied for in 1753. So, and the Thomas Lindley, 1755, which was a year earlier than the Allen grant and the Simon Dixon grant, they were applied together. Now, I have not found where the land office was, where they had to go. Back up. Some of the people that I've asked about haven't been able to tell me, but they thought it's all the way down here to Newbern, which is way down here in its extreme end. I don't know. I don't know where the land office was. Okay. Now, the first land grants that I have found, the Granville grants in that area, are 3. Anthony Shamnes, they didn't know where it was, in Anson County or well, maybe it's the Wells, in Anson County or Bladen County. They didn't know. It was so, the surveyor didn't know. And Anson, the county seat of Anson, was 100 miles to the west, and Bladen was 100 miles to the east, and that was where Simon Dixon's certificate was addressed to, called Carver's Creek, and that would have been way down there. And then, of course, we get busy with the Pikes later, the John Pike. And this turned out to be in the McCullough grant after McCullough got the grant. I mean, this property is in there. And all of this is within a mile of where the present day meeting house is. Go back.
Yeah, go back one. Okay, one after that.
Okay.
There we go. Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's the next one.
Abigail Pike. She was a firebrand. She said, now, if Rachel Wright would go, says upward of 30 families in this area. This was in 1751. Actually, her child, Nathan Pike, is said to be the first child born in that area. And he was born in 48. So there we come into the 3-year differential. So she came from the eastern coast to Hopewell in the upper Shenandoah Valley, and then got into migration to King Creek. So she was familiar with the friends were already in eastern Carolina. Now, okay, Chris. Back up once more. And that was their mode of travel, if you can see horseback. Mm-hmm. I mean, Rachel Wright and Abigail Pike, about 240 miles through the wilderness to ask for permission to settle a friend's meeting. And now this memorial marker is a lasting gift of the 250, well, there's a word, sesquibicentennial, 250. We worked a long time to be able to pronounce that word. And that was a lasting gift from that memorial committee for the meeting. And then it don't show, but we've got a memorial garden with names inscribed in brick that can be added to at any time. Okay. Quaker activity on the coast. If you can read that, 1762.
1670.
1672. Missionaries William Edmondson and George Fox, founders of the Society of Friends in America, held religious meetings in this area. So your Quaker roots don't go back much further than that in America. Now, we're talking about back up. William Edmondson. He had a daughter that married William Fayle, F-A-Y-L-E. They had a daughter that married Henry Holiday. And we have 2 Holiday children, William and Robert, that married in Newland here in this migration too. And then we've got a Holiday girl back there in the back from King Creek.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So your roots don't go much deeper than that, okay? Now this, Rachel Wright and Abigail Pike appeared before a quarterly meeting at Little River, Perquimans quarterly meeting. That was the one that they had the authority to establish a monthly meeting. And this is the wording on there. And then this top one is one side and an old geezer. And then this is the other side, the bottom. Okay. Now, this is the minute that the quarterly meeting issued authorizing a meeting on King Creek. They didn't name it, just because the waterways were the only identifiable source, and that was, Friends had this, named their meetings after location, where they would gather for worship. And that is the actual minute of where that was authorized in 1751. We don't have, now that's the state highway marker sign there. This is the first meeting in 1751 in Piedmont, North Carolina. And they named this meeting King Creek, just like Paoli or whatever. I don't know about, we might talk about Paoli later. And these were the certificates of the people that were there at that meeting, presented their certificates first meeting. Then this is a listing of families that presented their certificates within the first 18 months. So just look at that for a minute.
Couple Quaker names in there.
Do you see any familiar?
Oh, a couple.
Okay. Now, as we said earlier, Thomas Lindley was the only Lindley that came. He came from New Garden Meeting House, which was in New Garden Township. Now we had opportunities to worship in New Garden. This is a late photo. We had opportunity to worship there with friends. And as you can see, his family were all born in Pennsylvania, except Deborah and Jonathan. That's the one we'll focus on. The youngest child being born in Orange County, North Carolina. Okay. Spring meeting. This is the first document that we have where a meeting was held at the spring. Can you read it? Mm-hmm. At the spring. Now, that sign's inaccurate because it's almost impossible to think that they would have had a meeting house before they had a meeting. And then we go through the steps of an indulged meeting, a preparative meeting, and eventually spring attained monthly meeting status. in, and we find that, well, tradition has it that Thomas Lindley donated the property for Spring. But the records indicate that Jonathan Lindley inherited the home place, and later on he issued a deed to the trustees. That's when they actually acquired the property to be their own. Now this was just, this on the left, that was just a traveling friend. He just passing through and held a meeting at the spring. Okay. Now, this is where we want to focus on. So we'll take a jiffy and read this. I think it's quite self-explanatory. Successful in business. With the he had 3 or 4. Jonathan had acquired 3 or 4 tracts of land for the total to be a huge sum. And this first up here, a tribute to Nancy Lindley Oslin. The turpentine I would question, because it's mostly hardwood in that area and not the pine. I would question it. But he was successful in business, very successful. And this same woman says that when he came to Indiana, he had a huge sum of money with him. Active in politics. Elected in 1788 as one of 5 delegates to consider the ratification of our Constitution. And when they first considered it, it was rejected because it did not include what we know as the Bill of Rights. And then after they were added, it came back and was approved for North Carolina. I read this article that well, it was earlier than this. In those dates, 1788, 1805, there are 5 terms in the House of Commons. Now remember, this is what we call the legislature, and then 1 term in the Senate. And during that time, Abner Nash, a governor of North Carolina, presided over this constitutional convention. Now I'm going to read you let's see. The possibility of the name of your namesake. That's a possibility. Abner Nash had a son named Jonathan Paoli Nash. That died young during that convention. Now that's the possibility that your namesake, that name Paoli. Now, this last paragraph there, in his publication, John Punchon, publication Reasons for Hope, John Punchon made this statement. The Quakers were so well respected in the formation of our nation that they could have played a much greater role, but they chose to just withdraw, but not Jonathan Lindley, because he was active in the legislature and the ratification of our Constitution. Now, I quote from a Herman husband of a previous generation, that would have been in the 1750s and 60s. Now, he had harsh words for these Quakers that withdrew, and I have it right here. Through laziness and love of a little ease, give up the public welfare and submit to unjust laws, become just like slaves. That is quite an indictment for those Quakers that just withdrew. Now, here we go. The journey. In 1808, Jonathan Lindley and Jesse Towle, we'll see their name later, traveled to an area near Terre Haute to scout out to move. He was successful in business, politics, so why would we want to move? Now, a lot of writers have said to get away from slavery, but I think economics was a big factor. Now, you've got to remember, at that point in time, commercial plant food had not been developed. And that land had been tended for some 50 years, and with nothing to be returned to it. So it was, well, it was say wore out. Now we get that more concise in John Marshall's will of the same time in the King Creek area. He had 3 or 4 sons, and he had acquired quite a number of acres of land, and he wanted to divide it between them. He said he would not attempt to, but they divided among themselves. But the one that got the home place would get 20 acres more than the rest of them because it was badly worn. That's it. And then we also have later a letter from Hiram Roach to his, after the settler, from Hiram Roach to his brother-in-law, Micajah McPherson, telling about the price of land, the yield and what he could expect from it, and he concludes this letter with, "Mercator, sell out and come on." So I think that there's possibly more of an economic reason than the slavery issue. Now that's just my opinion, and it's not written in stone, but that's okay. Let's see, where do we go? All right, now these are the families that got certificates to Lick Creek from King Creek. Now I got that listing from Southern Quakers and Slavery by Stephen Weeks. So you can look in there, and there may be some familiar names in there. And the bottom listing here is where I have picked out from Encyclopedia American Quaker Genealogy from Henshaw. And by that time, Spring had attained monthly meeting status, and they moved their membership from King Creek to Spring. So they would show up in the spring meetings. And some of the names that we won't point out was the Towel, of course the Lindley, and up at the top, Rhubarb. You probably never heard of Rhubarb. And Hadley and Holiday and Newland. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, in the 1920s and 30s, there was an organization called themselves the Southern Alamance Pioneer Association. And each year, they would erect a historical marker for a pioneer. And see, I labeled it a historical marker, not a tombstone, because that's what it was. And you could see the dates when this was erected. This was 150 years after the death of him. Now, that's the plaque on the Hadley, but this is a picture of the entire monument. It was a stone from the Hadley property, and with the plaque placed on it. And if you look to the left right there, that's where Mark stirred up the Yellow Jackets.
Yep. I know it well.
Of course, this is the birth and death recorded on the place. Okay. Two more. Newland and the Holidays. Now you can see this, the Holidays especially. See, on each side was the original grave markers, and in the center is the memorial marker. And Newland over here. And there's the Mary Fail. Remember Henry Holland and Mary Fail? That's the one we're talking about that goes all the way back to William Edmondson. Yes. And they had two children join the migration. Okay. Lindley Mills today. That's quite a far cry from what it was. It has not been in the Lindley family constantly. It's been in other families. But a few years ago, Joe Lindley, he was a surgeon, medical doctor surgeon. He bought this tract of land. It was only about 4.5 acres because Thomas Lindley and Hugh Laughlin had a partnership. Hugh Laughlin had the site for the pond, and Lindley bought the site for the mill. And so it's only about 4.5 acres. And I imagine many of you have ties to that Lindley mill. You think you do? Well, Joe's late teenage boys, 2 boys, they started up that mill and started making hush puppy mix just as a hobby. And it went so well that it grew and it grew, and here it is today. And now they make, grind and blend the ingredients for Papa John. So do you have ties to that?
For Papa John.
For Papa John. And now, the slide don't show it, but that's at the top of the storage silo established in 1755. And this is the mill as it is today. Okay. Now, this is the spring meeting house welcome sign today. This is the spring meeting house today. Now, Jane Andrews and Joe Bill Lindley told me that the original meeting house would have been about where the road is. Said it was customary that the burial ground be right behind the meeting house. So this is a later model. And now the next is the interior of it. That's the interior of Spring Meeting House today. There's the facing bench up there. And see how it's arranged. That is it's recently been renovated and put in this. And they rely heavily on the unprogrammed type of worship with occasional speakers to come through for various subjects. Now the next one. Here's King Creek today. Still a positive influence in the area through the community. As this slide shows, a beacon of light, if you will. When we had our 250th anniversary, we put it out on the website for about 2 years announcing it. And I had an email from a lady in California. And this is what the email said. Just knowing that I have this Quaker heritage, I know that it has influenced my culture and the choices I've made in life. And you can't say it much better than that. Last one.
Hey, we're going to take questions for John.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Let's do a minute or two.
Oh, okay. John.
Look at the slide.
Yes, sir. In the tradition, this is Jordan's meeting house in England, and it's one of the most famous Quaker paintings called The Presence in the Mist. And it is silent worship. So John has requested before we have questions that we have a short period of silent, unprogrammed worship, and then out of that we'll have questions. Okay, are there any questions for John? Yes, sir.
Yeah, as I understand it, when Lindley family moved from North Carolina to Orange County, all the sons stayed in Orange County except for Aaron Lindley, who moved to Monrovia. Do you know why that was, why he didn't stay there?
That's news to me. I can't answer that.
Okay, I'm going to interpret, John has hearing issues, so as you ask me, then I will tell John and then have him answer. Any other questions? Questions from anyone?
Wanda has one.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Is there a book written that a person can purchase to learn more?
Is there a book that has been purchased that they can learn more?
A what?
A book that has been written that they can purchase so they can learn more. Is there a book that has been written where they can learn more about the migration?
This lady has one more.
Okay.
Now, I brought a publication called Friends at the Spring and left it here. And that is about the most comprehensive of any that I have found, and copies are available. Okay.
Okay, and who else had a question? Yes, Glenn.
I read someplace where there's 218 families in this caravan that come from North Carolina to Orange County here, and it said that they painted their wagons blue, and that they lived in their wagons long enough to build a church and their schools. Well, they lived out of their wagons that long. And I just wondered if he had any information on that. And I have the oxen yoke in my possession. The father gave it to me. That brought our family in this caravan. And on my father's side. My mother's side also come in the same caravan, if I understand it right, with this family. And that oxen yoke, and John looked at it yesterday, and so did Mark. It looked to me like it had been painted blue, because I read where all their caravan wagons, or covered wagons, were painted blue. And it seemed to me like, and I don't know what you fellows thought of it, but it seemed to me like that I could still see a little bit of that faint blue paint on it. And my father told me, and I talked to them about this yesterday, about it come with a big oxen and a little oxen, and they got it about the Cumberland Gap, the little oxen gave out. So they drilled holes, or they made holes in the oxen yoke, so the big oxen, I can't tell this hardly, the big oxen had to pull the load. So I went some time ago and I looked at this yoke, and sure enough, it's got two sets of holes in it. And so, being curious as I was, I asked my dad, how in the world did they get holes in there? Who had a bracing bit to drill a hole in there? And he said they didn't drill a hole. He said they burned it. And sometime he said that they'd stopped at someone's house and stayed overnight. While the lady was cooking breakfast the next morning, they heated a rod red hot and took that rod and drove it through that yoke. Well, in earlier years, I went back and I looked at the yoke, and I could definitely see where they had burnt that hole through that yoke. But they had two holes, and there are no taps and threads or anything like that on that yoke. Everything has got a hole in it and a pin through it.
So John, do you know how many families came from North Carolina to Indiana?
I have read this also. And as we said earlier, we only are able to find records of the Quakers because we know there were many more that came with them that we can't find. Now, we actually know the Braxtons. They were never Quaker. So we get that from the family. We don't get that from the Quaker records. And we know there were many of them that came that we don't have any records. But as
I understand that was in 1811, and the ground territory was settled from the Northwest Territory, and I have a deed on part of the land. Well, my son owns it now, but I have a deed that come from Northwest Territory. I forget the president at that time, but it was settled, and the Trimble farm out south of Paoli there, the whole farm, and I happen to have, I think, 26 acres of it, because I was in line to inherit it, or I didn't inherit it, I had to buy it. I was in line, and it is the oldest farm in Indiana that has been in the same family continuous since the first deed from the Northwest Territory in our family.
we have a handout of the journey. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I have a handout and I'll make it available to everybody.
Rhubarb the Rhubarb parents and children came and got ready for to settle here. Two of the Rhubarb children go back to Carolina to claim their brides, to get married. Now they were in a Ridge preparative meeting that never attained monthly meeting status. But so their membership was held at Cane Creek because it's a monthly meeting.
Any other questions? Yes.
I understand that John Isaac Lindley was beheaded in Ireland in 1675. Is that true, and does that have something to do with why the other Lindleys moved to Pennsylvania?
Repeat that.
Isaac Lindley was, he understands that Isaac Lindley was beheaded in Ireland in 1675, and would that have anything to do with the Lindleys coming to America?
All I know is that Isaac Lindley left this town in England, Chestershire, to move to Ireland because of being persecuted. So I don't know about it being beheaded. Now this is from a Lindley researcher. I don't know who did that. Okay.
Anyone else? What we're going to do is we're going to have in just a second, Robert Henderson is going to come up front and close us out this evening. And then we're going to go downstairs, have cookies and lemonade. And at that point, if you have any other questions for John or just want to talk to him, we'll extend our fellowship down there. And then I do have a handout for everybody, and so I'll give it to you either as you go out or go downstairs. So, Robert?
A remarkable journey. Did you enjoy that?
Oh, yeah.
Can you give him a hand? What a joy it's been to have John here with us in Orange County, Indiana. And when Mark brought the idea of this program to the Historical Society, we said yes enthusiastically. And we're so proud to be a sponsor and to be a part of this wonderful evening. And the mission of the Orange County Historical Society is to preserve the history of Orange County and its people. And we thought this was a perfect fit, and it's something we've looked forward to. And I want to thank you. What a wonderful turnout.
Yes.
And we're so pleased, I know Mark is as well, to see so many of you here that's interested in our story and Orange County history. And so it's great to have all of you with us. And I know so many of you tonight, this journey meant so much to me because my family was a part of the Hendersons, and James Henderson making his way and carving out a home in the Indiana wilderness. So like many of you, this has been a wonderful evening, a celebration of those courageous pioneers, and that all of us very much are connected to and linked. And so we want to thank you for coming and for being a part of it. And John, what an honor it was to have him at the Lindley House. Earlier today, he's been on a whirlwind tour of Orange County, and we welcomed him at the Thomas Elwood Lindley House this morning, and had a great time with him. Chris was there, and they really enjoyed upstairs looking at the Lindley family tree and all the Lindley items inside the house. But John, what an honor it's been to have you with us, and we are so grateful to you for making the journey here and for sharing this remarkable story which links all of us to the past, and what a rich history we have. And so we have a little gift for you, and the County of Orange celebrated its bicentennial in 2016, along with the state of Indiana celebrating 200 years. And the Orange County Historical Society published a beautiful book, A Pictorial Journey of 200 Years of History. And we have signed one, and we want to present that to you as a gift on behalf of the Historical Society. Thank you so much for sharing your history and being with us tonight.
Thank you. This is part of, see, I had families in there too.
I know it, absolutely. It's all part of our story. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
It keeps me busy.
There are two books that are available to you. One is Cane Creek, The Mother of Meetings, and the other, which is just newly published, is Friends at the Spring, History of Spring Monthly Meeting, and both of these are available on the internet. We have for each family this Alamance genealogist, and this chronicles the journey of all the families that went from Orange County, North Carolina to Orange County, Indiana, a day-by-day journal. So as you leave, we'll give you one of these. You're welcome to go downstairs and enjoy cookies and lemonade. And again, thank you for being here. God bless you. Thank you, John.